Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the day 5, our final lesson of the free week in software quality assurance testing. Let's quickly take a look what we have been through so far, right? So by now, we have learned what testing is, what software testing is, also how important it is to learn the product before we jump into testing. We also learned about bugs, the bug lifecycle, right? We answered the question, what if developer rejects your bug? We also created a bug, more specifically, a bug report. We talked about importance of including steps to reproduce in your bug report so that developers can reproduce or recreate the bug that you have reported, because the ultimate goal of creating a bug report is getting that issue fixed, right? We also talked about how important it is to be communicative, to be proactive as a tester, because it's all about communication. Projects are not done by one person, it's done and completed as a team. So you have to be communicating both verbally and in written form with the developers, the business analysts, the end users, the subject matter experts, to get your task done, basically, right? To bring more quality for the product, for the software that you're testing at the end of the day. We also talked about and introduced you to 2 different languages. One being a database language, database query language, SQL. So we talked about data layer of the application architecture and where the data or the information is stored. We talked about tables and we wrote a couple of queries, specifically select query. We learned how to filter our queries, so order our queries, and so on. We did some quick exercise such as how to find the highest salary, how to find the second highest salary. Another frequently asked interview question that comes up a lot, which is how to find the duplicate records in the table. We did that too. So if you missed those lessons, please rewatch. Very useful, especially if you are going through interviews as a QA tester. And yesterday we looked into Python, right? Python, as I mentioned, it has been becoming the most popular programming language in the world, and used widely both for application development, for data analytics, and also for artificial intelligence. Nowadays widely taught and included in the syllabus of majority of the universities. And nowadays I see that also in the middle schools and high schools and so on. So Python is pretty much everywhere, and including in test automation, something that we're going to talk about today. All right, so today you're going to learn how to drive the browser. As interesting as it sounds, how to drive the browser. So you will learn how to launch the browser, how to navigate to a specific web page, such as, let's say, google.com or yahoo.com, and also how to perform certain actions such as input text, perform a click operation, and refresh the page, close the page, or maybe take a couple of screenshots. First, let's talk about why to automate the test cases. This is actually another interview question. So why do we need to automate, and what's the need to automate the test cases? It comes down to 3 different factors, which is time, money, and resources, which all of them pretty much are limited. And as companies or organizations and teams, they develop the software, they run into this issue of constantly changing applications and And there is a specific type of testing called regression testing. Regression testing, the idea of regression testing is that you need to check as a tester, or you need to make sure that the developer unintentionally didn't break the code or didn't introduce new bugs while fixing the bug report that you just communicated, right? Or they unintentionally didn't break the working functionalities while introducing a new functionality. So that's the idea behind the regression testing, and it's time consuming to perform regression testing. It really means that you have to rerun the test cases that already passed as soon as a new change is made to the application. The recent change might actually introduce bugs to the functionalities which have been working. So therefore, this is when the automation comes into picture. And it is very helpful. It reduces a lot of time, especially in test case execution. So initially, it takes a lot of time. So it's like you're investing your time to create the automated test cases, to convert the manual test cases into automated test cases. There's this initial investment that happens, and sometimes for certain organizations, it's difficult to understand that automation takes some time to actually implement, to create frameworks from scratch, and then that's when you can see the result, right, in the long run. So the next question is 100% automation possible, or is automation testing going to completely replace the manual testing in the near future, and am I going to lose my career as a manual tester? The answer is no. Automation testing can never pretty much replace the manual testing. It is here as an additional effort, as a help to the manual testing. It reduces the cost of testing. Automation testing is here to reduce the cost of testing by automatically running the same test cases over and over again. As I mentioned earlier, regression test cases, running them over and over again, unattended, right? You could leave it overnight after work hours, and the robot, pretty much the scripts that you have written in Python are running the test case automatically, launching the browser, performing validations, and passing and failing the test cases, taking screenshots, and all those steps that you would actually do manually and spend weeks, pretty much. But remember, automation comes after manual testing. So you are, as an automation tester, converting the manual test cases into automated test cases when the application is more or less stable, and we call that as a build. Build is a version of the application. When the build is more or less stable, when the manual test cases have passed, and this is a good time to start converting those manual test cases into automated test cases. And it, as I said, and I can repeat that again, it can never replace the attention to detail that manual testers have, logical thinking that you have, and the curiosity that you have to find the defects. All right, so now the next question is, what exactly do you automate? Right, as we talk about automation so much, what exactly are you automating? You're automating the test steps. If you remember from our first lesson, we created a test case together to log into an application. And in Azure DevOps, we created our test steps within the test case. Test steps sounded like open the browser or navigate to a particular web address, input the username, input the password, and click the login button and then check that the product screen is displayed, right? So we had this kind of assertion or check at the end, and then that's when we decided, okay, to pass or fail the test case. So those test steps are being automated, and also the comparison of this actual expect and then against the expected, right? And we talked about this expected versus actual comparison, that being the underlying logical thinking or condition behind the test case execution. So you're always comparing what you had in the requirement documents and what you're seeing when you're executing your test cases in the application. And that process, that comparison, can be automated. Another important task, repeatable or time-consuming, tedious task for manual testers is taking evidence, taking screenshot. As a manual tester, you're always taking screenshots, especially when the test cases fail. And that process can also be automated. And you're also manually passing or failing your test cases, right? This is another task that should be automated. And also generating test reports. So in any business process, pretty much, your senior management or your direct manager, they're asking or they're expecting some sort of status report from time to time. It can be a weekly report or a daily report, and the report would include how many test cases were executed, how many test cases passed, how many test cases failed, right? How many defects were created, and what are the severity levels of those defects? Are those defects in closed status or they're still pending? How many defects are rejected, right? So that kind of information goes into the test report, and that can be automated as well. So now let's jump into automation and then see the examples of how we can actually drive the browser. But the first concept that you need to be introduced to is how the front layer or the presentation layer of the software is built. So the presentation layer of the software, the layer where you look at or interact with for the most part, is created using the HTML language. So HTML language is pretty simple. So you, as a tester, you really don't have to learn this language as developers would do. All you have to do is understand it, understand how it's structured, pretty much, so that you can interact with the presentation layer or the front end of the application. So within those angle brackets, as you can see, the HTML and then head and body footer, those are the tag names. We refer to them as tags or elements. So this is called as an HTML tag. And then, so HTML tag being the overall parent tag for everything else. And that includes, so within HTML tag, you have head and the body. All of the content or most of the content that you see on the page goes within the body tag. And it's really like Lego blocks, pretty much, right? So it's like building blocks of the skeleton of the application, pretty much. Okay, so we'll see the real example of the HTML code behind the web pages such as Google, and you're gonna see that it's actually easy. So what are we going to do today? What are we going to learn, practically? What we're going to do today is we will launch the browser automatically. We will go to a web page. When we say a website or web page, we're really talking about a specific address, right? We refer to that as a URL or a web address. And then on that page, we will find the elements. If you were interacting with the browser or the application manually, you would just drag your mouse and then go to a specific element and then click and then enter, type in your text, right? But in automation, you have to write a script to identify, to find that particular element, because automation wouldn't have a pair of eyes like you have, and the coordination to move the move the mouse, right? So you will have to write a script to guide it, basically, and it's quite easy. And we will perform certain actions such as clicking on the element or entering text, or maybe clearing the box as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and with all that being said, let's go ahead and try. So the first thing first, what we're looking at right now is called as a Visual Studio Code, or VS Code. Last time when we were learning Python, we looked into a code editor that was on a web page, right? But this is the real, or the actual tool that's used on a daily basis by millions of developers and testers out there. And you will have this tool installed in your computer. But besides that, for an automation to work, you need some preparation or environment preparation or installation that needs to happen on your local computer. And those instructions will be provided. And that includes, first of all, this particular tool. And apart from that, you need to have Python language binding installed in your local computer. And also, Python has many add-ons or add-ins and what we refer to as libraries, such as Selenium. And that Selenium library was also supposed to be installed in your computer. And there are some additional setups, such as having the Firefox installed if we're working on a Firefox, or a Chrome if we are planning to launch our web page on a Chrome browser. And each browser has specific driver, and that driver also has to be installed in your computer. So that is a bit more technical, but let's just assume that all of that is already installed in your computer, and we're going to skip those line 1 and 2, but I can speak in general. As I mentioned, that there will be a library called Selenium installed in your computer. And from that Selenium, you're importing the interface called a WebDriver. So WebDriver, as it says in English, it's going to help you to drive the browser, pretty much. Okay, so if you look at the line 4, I put a comment here. And the comment says, launch the browser. And this is going to launch the browser. This line of code is going to launch the browser. And the driver here is the name of the variable, name of the variable. So I could name it as anything else. I could say browser as well, right? But it's widely accepted just to name it as a driver. And if you happen to change it to Chrome, then it's going to open it in Chrome or Edge and so on. But we're just going to go with the Firefox for this demo session. So here's what we're going to do. We'll go ahead and run. And to run, the command is Python, or in short, you can say just py. And this -i stands for interactive mode. So it's better to just to show you how every step happens interactively, and that's why we're going to run it in interactive mode. And we're simply going to mention the file name and hit enter. So what we're expecting now is that Firefox browser should pop up. Pretty much it should be launched. Now as you can see, we have the Firefox open right here. I'm going to put it on the right-hand side, and I will just go back and then take this so that they are really side by side, pretty much. Okay, so I have them side by side, and I will check the driver.name. So driver.name, it's going to tell me what kind of browser I'm dealing with. As you can see, it says Firefox, right? So we're dealing with a Firefox. Now, how to get to a particular web address, a web page such as Google? The command, or what we refer to as a method in Python, is get, right? So it's driver.get, and within the parentheses and within quotation marks, we have to give a web address that we want to go to. In this case, I will give the Google, as you can see, right? And it has to be a correct web address. So now pay attention on the right-hand side. So when I hit enter, it's navigating to Google. Okay, so it's that simple, pretty much. Now we can try to go to another web page here, driver.get. So basically we're saying, let's go to another web page. And let me get the address here, just to make it quick. So this is another address, and familiar to you, because since we were using this in manual testing, when I hit enter, it navigates to another web page. Now, here's some additional information that you can get from the driver or from the browser. So we know that we can get its name, driver.name. We check that. But there's another important information that it can tell you, which is the title, driver.title. So the title stands for the information that you see on top of the browser tab. Right now, if you look at the browser tab, it says Swag Labs. So if I hit enter, that information can be accessed. So I can access this particular information. If I had a requirement saying, you know, the browser tab has to say Swag Labs, I could actually check that. And the way to check it is you're going to say driver.title and, you know, double equation sign. This is a way of comparing, right? This is a way of comparing in Python. So I would say driver.title is should be equal to Swag Labs, and I hit enter, it returns true. But if I say it's equal to Google, then you're going to get a correct answer saying it's false. You can also get the current URL, driver.current URL. As you can see, it knows where the web page currently is. So we have access to the current URL as well. Now, just like you could go back or hit the back button on the browser, you can go back using the script as well. Driver.back. Just make sure you don't forget the parentheses, because any method, any action in Python ends with a parenthesis, opening and closing parenthesis. So as you can see, we just jumped back. Okay, so now we could do driver.forward as well, and then go back to the other page that we had earlier, right? And you can also do driver.maximize window. If I do this, as you can see, the browser window got maximized. It's just behind this code, but it is maximized. And I could also do minimize window. So there's a lot of methods or actions that you could actually perform. So if I say minimize window, as you can see, just disappeared. It is now minimized, and I can bring back. The good thing about command line always is that if you use the up arrow, you can go back to the previous commands. So I'm using the previous commands, and I all I need is the maximize window. If I hit it, it's just going to bring it back, okay? But how can I close it? To close it, you simply go ahead and say driver.quit, or you could also say driver.close. There's a slight difference between them, but in general, both of them works or behaves the same way if you have just one tab. In our case, we have just one page open on the browser. So we'll go ahead and close it, driver.quit, it's gone. Okay, all right. So now, here's what we're gonna do. We're going to perform some actions on the Google page. Okay, CLS stands for clear screen, so that I can have a clear screen so that we can start from scratch. So we're going to run that again, and we'll open our Firefox. We'll go to Google and then perform some actions. Specifically, we'll search for any text, basically, on the Google search box. Okay, so let's go ahead and say driver.get. That will be the first step, right? And we want to go to Google. Okay, let's go to Google. All right, no problem. All right, so yes, the lessons are always being recorded, as you know, and we will share it. So make sure to rewatch, especially when things get more technical. Rewatching the lessons are a very important part of learning process. Okay. So the next step is, now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and then enter text into this particular input box. We want to enter text. But how would your Python script know where to enter text, right? There could be several, input boxes, and you need to uniquely identify the web element. So this is when your knowledge in HTML comes into picture. So we'll go ahead and right-click on the element that we want to interact with, and then choose the option Inspect. Okay, choose the option Inspect. So when you do that, you will see this script like page, right? And in there, we're just going to go ahead and shrink it so that you can see that this is the HTML that we were talking about. So as you can see, this is HTML tag, and within HTML tag, we have head and we have body, and we will be dealing with the elements that are in the body. As you can see, if I just go through, just hover over them, each element on the page, I can see which element we're dealing with. But for your convenience, on the left-hand side, there is this particular icon or symbol. It is an element picker or object spy. You can call it that way. So if you just click on it, it's going to help you to spy the objects. Okay, so we'll go ahead and just click on this input box again, and then look into our element. So this is an input tag, and the way that we can interact with it is that we need to identify this element uniquely. And within the tags, there are attributes and attribute values, right? Attribute name and attribute values. And the name being one of the frequently used attribute name and attribute value, pretty much to uniquely identify the element. So that's something that we're going to use, and you're going to see it in a minute. So we're going to say driver dot find element and by name. And what is the name? Name would be just the letter Q. Okay, and we will take that element and then save it to a variable, just like we we took the Firefox browser and then we saved it into a driver variable. We're going to take the element and then save that element into a variable, and I just came up with a name, search box. Search box equals driver.findElement by name, and let's go ahead and say Q, and it should work. Okay, so what we just did was we took the element and then saved that element into a search box. We can search box a variable, we can close it, and now we can interact with that element. So we'll say search box. Now we want to enter a text, and to enter text, the command would be send keys, as if you are hitting or pressing the keys on your keyboard. Send keys. Send keys, remember, it's a string, right? We talked about it yesterday when we learned Python. Whenever you're dealing with strings, you are using quotation marks. So search box dot send keys, and let's say we want to search for QA engineer salary in US. Here we go. Okay, so as soon as I hit enter, you can see that text was entered or input into the search box. Okay, so now we learn how to interact with an element. We learn how to enter text into the input field on the web page. But I have to hit enter here, right? So otherwise I don't have the actual result. So the command for this would be submit. So search box dot submit. So if I hit enter, here we go. So as you can see now, we have the results. Speaking of the salary, so probably most of you are interested or have questions about that as well. But the expected salary is usually, you can see it here as well. It says average salary is 76,000 per year. So pretty much, yeah, that's I would say I would agree with this estimation. It's February 2023. Average salary, or the starting salary for bootcamp graduates is should be around that minimum. I think 75,000. That will be fair, but it goes higher depending on your knowledge, your skills, and how you present yourself, and the position, and also the state, right? Well, there's a particular difference also we need to take into account between the states, though, right? So if you're in a let's say in a remote state, like let's say maybe Missouri, would the salary would be different in comparison to if you're in New York City. So that has to be taken into account. But the salaries go up to 120,000, as I know. Yes, QA engineers, automation testers, ETL testers can go up to 120,000. I've seen, and it's absolutely normal. All right, let's stay on the topic of test automation. So we have a question in the code where you have specified Firefox driver class path to launch the browser. Okay, all right. Yes, it's a good question. So this is, as I mentioned at the beginning, one of the steps that you have to take into and then perform at the beginning when you're preparing the environment, that the location of the drivers. So for each browser, there is a separate driver object that has to be in your computer. And for Firefox specifically, it's called as a Gecko driver. That Gecko driver has been installed, downloaded and placed in a specific location, and that location is added to your path variable. Okay, there's an environment variable called path. So we're going a bit more technical here for beginners, but yeah, this is where it is saved, and in that case, you really don't have to mention the specific path here, and you can simply go with the WebDriver.Firefox, and it works pretty much. Okay, so now that we performed that validation, let's go ahead and close our browser. So which would be as simple as quit, or last time we used quit, this time we can use close. All right, you see that? So what we just used, try to close, or apply the close operator to the element, but not to the driver, right? So there's a specific difference between the browser and the web element. So we have to be closing the browser, not the web element. So we're gonna submit driver.close. As you can see, the browser is gone, and the web page is closed for us. Now, the next step is going to be interesting, because now we're going to go ahead and try to create the script actually on the code editor, not in the terminal. Okay, so that's that will be the next step, so that we'll write comments so that you can see how it actually works out. So this is the website that we're going to launch. This is the website that we're going to launch. That's going to be our goal here. Let's maximize our window. Let's put a comment here. First thing is maximize browser. Let's maximize our browser, and that would be driver.maximize window. Okay, and pay attention. I'm putting comments in every step, and that's important, and that creates readability of your code. If anyone else is looking in your code, which is the common case when you're working in a team, it has to be clean and clear, and they should be able to follow along what you are trying to achieve in the code, right? So the next step would be navigate to login page. Okay, so if we want to navigate to login page, we're going to say driver dot, if you remember, get. You see that the integrated development environment, so what we call as IDE, such as Visual Studio Code, helps you or makes your life easier by telling you or giving you hints about the commands or methods that you have to run. Okay, so now right here we have to mention our web address, right? Our web address. So let's go ahead and identify what the next step is. So we will go right here. So the next step for us would be to enter text into username field and the password field. Okay, so how do I know how to interact with this particular element? Let's see if you've been paying attention. So what's the step that I should take to identify this element right now? Because I want to enter text in this element, right? What should I do? How can I enter text into username and password fields? Yeah, let's check your answers. So first step is going to be, we're going to right click. That's right. We're going to right click and then inspect the element, right? We're going to right click and then go to this particular element tag, and then look for, let's say, a name or ID attributes, pretty much. Okay, so we found the ID attribute, and we can use the name as well. So I'm just going to copy this over, and we'll come back, and then let's say here, find the elements. Okay, so finding the elements would be as easy as driver dot find element, and then by ID. And for the ID, we'll go ahead and use the username. And let's call this as username field. Okay, this username field. So the next is password field. So again, we're going to write driver.find element be by ID, but I need the ID for the password. So we will click on our objects by tool and then find the password, and then look for the ID or name for the password. So ID would be password right here. I'm going to copy and then paste driver dot find element. That worked. So what's the next step? The next step is now we need to click, right? So we have to identify the login button as well. So the same step, let's go ahead and write login button, right? We're creating a new variable called login button here. And then we will find that element, hopefully by ID. Let's say if it has an ID. So this, if we inspect the login button and then check if it has an ID, I see it has an ID. So an ID is called as a login button right here. Okay, so far we have found the elements. Of course, we didn't test it, we didn't check it yet. If we wrote the correct code, I mean, we'll certainly test it in a minute. The next step would be enter values, right? We need to enter username and password and click login. That's what we're going to do next. Pretty much your test steps, right? This is where your test steps are written, okay? And you can compare it with what you did for in Azure DevOps for manual testing, right? So we need to enter values, and as we know, to enter any text, we use the send keys method. So we will send the standard username. Let's send the standard username, and for the password field, we will send the secret sauce password. And then on the login button, we will perform a click operation. We'll perform a click operation. Now, so far, let's go ahead and see if that actually works. If we made any mistake, and so that we can debug, right? So we'll go ahead and run our code and then check if it launches the browser, maximizes the browser, and then goes to a web page, also finds those elements, and then enters the username, password, and clicks login. Let's see. All right. So everything worked fine. So it looks like so far we are in the products list page. So if you remember from your manual testing test case, the check here or the verification here was we need to make sure we actually logged in this particular page, right? We ended up in this page. Visually, you can see it. But if you're automating, you need to have some sort of check, some sort of checkpoint here. And that checkpoint can be placed for, let's say, for the product's value here. So as long as we see the product, as long as the script can find this product's list or a product's word or the value on the page, that's when we can conclude that we landed on the correct page. Okay, Now, that's when we're going to say pass or fail the test case, right? We're passing or failing the test case. We need to check if we landed in the correct place. To do that, what we're going to do, what we're going to write is our if statement. If you remember our conditional statement, if else statement. So we're going to say if products, let's check one more time. It is products, right? So I'm writing all lowercase, and you will see why. If products in driver dot page source. So page source is a method, is actually an attribute that returns all the HTML skeleton of the page, right? And this way we were saying if you can see the products, if the products is included in the HTML code, then most likely we're on the same page that we were expecting. And I'm using lower here, making sure that I don't run into case sensitivity issue here, right? So my products is lowercase, and I'm turning all the page source into lowercase. And the next step here would be, we're going to keep it simple. We're just going to print pass. Okay. And otherwise, we're going to print fail. Now, apart from that, we can also take a screenshot. So we'll take a screenshot, and to take a screenshot, the method is called as a save screenshot. Save screenshot. So, and you have to give the path where you want to save your screenshot and its name. So we're going to keep it simple and just save it in the same location as we have our script. So we'll give it a name saying login pass.png. Now let's copy this over and then put another screenshot here for the fail scenario. In case it fails, we're going to say login fail.png. Okay, so let's save this and then see how it goes, right? So let me close this. At the end, by the way, let's not forget to close the browser as well. Close the browser. Okay, driver.quit. So we're going to close the browser at the end. Now, screenshot is supposed to show up in the left-hand side here. And we need to have the pass or fail printed also at the bottom. So let's run our test case again and then see how it goes. So it might be too fast. And then I'll show you how we could actually slow it down a little bit. Okay, see that? That was very fast. And you can see that it actually printed pass in the terminal. It also gave us a screenshot right here, login underscore pass.png right here. You see the screenshot? It successfully saved the screenshot. Now, but it was too fast. Sometimes you want to see, especially for debugging purposes, you want to see the moment, and you can do this using the time library. From time, we're going to import sleep. So we're going to put our script to sleep for a couple of seconds before it closes the browser. So right here, I could say sleep for 5 seconds and then close the browser, right? So this would be like a pause. That's what we're trying to do. Like a pause and then close the browser. So let's run that again. Okay, we're on the page. We successfully landed here, and it's waiting for 5 seconds, and then it's quitting the browser. Now, let's see a failure scenario as well. Let's see if we can fail it. So how could we fail it? We want to fail it in a way that we don't log in, pretty much. If the login fails, the test case fails, right? The test case is going to look for products on the page, but it's not going to find the products because we never logged in. So the login basically failed. And to fail this, I'm going to change the secret sauce. I'll just make a typo at the end. Just going to remove one letter and go ahead and run the test case one more time. This time, our expectation is that it's supposed to fail. As you can see, here we go, right? Username and password did not match any user. And let's pay attention to the console or the terminal that we have. It says fail this time. And we also have a screenshot, a new screenshot that is named login_fail.png, right? So this was a very basic way, the basic introductory to Selenium and how you could actually drive the browser, how you could interact with the browser, how you find the elements, and take some screenshots, also pass or fail, and so on, right? But then again, in the actual test automation world, it gets a bit more complicated than this, and it's never learned in one day. It certainly takes time and determination, and what we call as framework will be built, right? So automation testers' main task, or what is expected from the automation testers, is the ability to create frameworks, test automation frameworks from scratch. And it's pretty much creating a platform which will help to automate the process, basically, to automate the test cases, so that the other automation testers can just come in and then just add test cases to the existing framework that you created. And we, as part of the bootcamp, we cover several test automation frameworks, including page object model, and also you're going to learn behavior-driven development related test automation framework called Cucumber, with the Gherkin and then Behave library of Python, and also the built-in automation framework PyTest will be used with the request library for automation of the API test cases. Now, with that being said, let me show you another example of a small test automation framework that's going to go ahead and run the same test case, pretty much the same test case that we were running, but it's going to do a bit more than this. So it's going to run several test cases, and let me show you if we can have this here. So for this one, we will go ahead and run. So it is built using the PyTest, and the way it works is that it's going to go to the same web page that we have, but it's going to interact with the Microsoft Excel and also take screenshots, create logs. By the way, as you can see right now, this log file is pretty much empty. There's no evidence in it. There's a data file, Microsoft Excel. So if we open this in the File Explorer and now look into this data file, you will see that the username, password combinations, and the expected text is parameterized. Basically, instead of just hard coding all those values in your code, you're taking them out into a separate spreadsheet or Excel, and that's referred to as a data-driven framework, or a small example of a data-driven framework, basically. But as part of the bootcamp, you're going to learn how to interact with Microsoft Excel, and also how to interact with the database automatically using Python as well. So let's go ahead and run this particular framework as well, and we're going to see the results. Should be quick. as you can see at the bottom, it tells you which test case it is pretty much executing. So this is a positive scenario, and here we go. And you can see the result here as you if you pay attention at the bottom, it says passed, right? 20% of test case passed. And it's a great useful information for reporting purposes. We're actually going to generate a report at the end as well, HTML report, which is which helps with the transparency and in the presentation, basically, for the managers with the test automation status. As I mentioned earlier, how many test cases you have ran, how many passed, and how many failed, that kind of information with detailed logs can be communicated. So if you pay attention on the left-hand side here, it is actually creating screenshots, right? Taking screenshots for every iteration, for every test case, pretty much. So the last one is made to fail, specifically, just to show you the example, because the expectation is here in this case is made as a product, but as you can see, where we did not log in successfully. All right, so that should be the end of the test case execution. Now let's go ahead and check. As you can see, we were running 5 test cases, and then 4 passed, and then the last test case pretty much failed. And we took all the screenshots here, as you can see, for each scenario. And apart from that, we generated logs as well, right? The logs are a very important part of test automation or any software development. This helps with providing information about each step, pretty much, of what was happening behind the scenes when you launch the browser, when you maximize the browser. If you can be very granular and detailed with your logs, or general as well, depending on what the requirement or expectation is from you. And also, let's take a look at the report that we generated. So if we reveal it in the File Explorer, this is a report that we just generated, report.html. Now, as you can see, this report right here is more representable, pretty much. So you have the number of test cases that passed, 4 test cases passed, 1 failed, right? 1 test case failed, 4 passed, in total 5. How much time was spent, duration, and also you can see the details here. The launching the browser, maximizing the window, checking if products exist on the page, and so on.